Welcome everybody to today's video. What we're going to cover today is a topic which I think is quite interesting, particularly in the modern context. And that topic is, what is it that we're really aiming for in life? Now that may sound like a huge proposition, but specifically in relation to either happiness or mental equanimity. And I think that this is a really important aspect that needs to be covered, where we can relate back to ancient yogic texts and look at perhaps the juxtaposition or the contrast with what we are encouraged to potentially seek in today's modern world. So I think generally we can agree that one question that we may get asked quite regularly by friends or families, are you happy? Are you happy with your life? And so on and so forth. And of course, it's not to say that we don't want to experience happiness as exactly that, as an experience at times in our lives. But what yoga asks us to question, at least from the philosophical portion of yoga, is it actually realistic to be able to achieve, hold on to, and sustain happiness at all times? The way that it presents this, without again going into too much detail in these short videos, is that essentially yoga presents the fact that there are two aspects in existence, if you like, and one is nature. And the quality of nature, the dominant quality of nature, is one of change. And so what that means is that everything that we experience, whether it be looking at a tree or experiencing the seasons, or even in terms of our mind and our thoughts and the way that we feel, all of this has one fundamental law, which is that it is subject to change. So even if we feel happy today, it's unlikely to last. Similarly, if we feel sad today, it's also in most cases unlikely to last. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is this space within us, which is called Purusha, or what is called awareness. And the quality of awareness, as mentioned in the Yoga Sutras, is that this is unchanging, it is immutable, and essentially is just always emanating as non-judgmental awareness from within us. And this awareness is the awareness that experiences and notices and is conscious of all of these other changeable experiences. So when we put it into this type of context, what we begin to understand is that happiness or joy or whatever it might be called, or any positive trait or emotion, is still something which is changeable, is transient, and therefore by its very nature is not likely to last. And the example that's often given is the example of ice cream. So we typically associate ice cream with being happy. That might be the case with one ice cream. It may still be the case with two ice creams, but by the time we've had our third or fourth or fifth or even sixth ice cream, we're likely to be feeling slightly sick and maybe slightly unhappy, because maybe we feel that we've exceeded what we should have had. And so therefore that which originally brought us happiness has actually brought us to an opposite state. And so that's why it's interesting to observe whether happiness is really something which is sustainable over the long term. So if happiness, if we can just sort of agree for a moment, is potentially not sustainable in every single moment of our lives, because we can't control what's going to go on around us. And as we know, we live in these human forms. And as we know, at the very least, that these human forms decay, we're going to get ill, we have diseases, we experience pain. Of course, we naturally experience the loss of our loved ones and those around us. And all of these things are kind of quite difficult to potentially remain happy in the face of, or when we're experiencing them. So what yoga actually encourages us to do, or encourages us to cultivate, we might say, is to cultivate a state of mental equanimity. And what that means is that we come to a deeper place within us, and essentially through practice and detachment, which we can talk about more another time, we get to a place that regardless of what's going on around us, we greet it with a state of mental equanimity. We let go of the expectation of what should be happening. We let go of the resistance to the things in our lives that we feel are challenging. And we eventually find ourselves arriving in this state of mental equanimity, so that regardless of what's going on in our lives, regardless of the circumstances arising, we are able to greet those moments, as I just mentioned, with this state of mental tranquility, which is essentially a state where we're not getting ruffled, we're not getting energized either positively or negatively by the experience. We're just here, we're watching, we're saying, there goes sadness, here it comes, there it goes. Here comes happiness, here it comes, there it goes. Here is joy, there goes joy. Here's a bit of depression, here's a bit of anxiety, there it goes, there it goes. So regardless of what comes up, the practice, and of course this is a practice, it's not like we can suddenly decide, okay, right, I'm going to be in a state of mental equanimity. But through the practice of drawing the mind inwards, through the practice of drawing the mind inwards and connecting to an object of attention, whether it be a mantra or our breath or sensations in the body, we train ourselves naturally to let go or to detach slightly from the distractions that draw us outwards and into connection with, or sticky connection with, things that can either make us overly happy or overly sad. And so yoga actually asks us to consider, is it actually better to be in a state of mental equanimity where we're neither too reactive to the ups or the downs, but we maintain this kind of sustained level of peace within us? Or actually whether it's better to be kind of thrown into the waves of the highs and the lows of life, and then also to observe, well, what happens when we do that? Now, this can sound quite controversial because, of course, we've been so accustomed to the idea that we should be able to feel anything that we want, and we should seek happiness, and we should reject the idea of being sad or depressed or whatever it might be. And it's not saying that we necessarily want to be sad or depressed, and it's not to say that we shouldn't necessarily feel happy all the time, but this is actually just about taking a more realistic perspective on what is possible given our nature and given the nature of our lives and the fact that we don't control things. And as we said earlier, that nature will gradually take its toll on us. It will decay us mentally, physically, and so forth. And so therefore yoga sets out a more longer term sustainable proposition, which is, can we find mental equanimity, and regardless of what is going on in our lives, can we sustain and live in that space? And that is really what all of the practices of yoga are slowly helping to guide us towards. Not a state of reactivity, but coming more in tune with this state of non-judgmental, compassionate awareness, regardless of what is going on in our lives. We just find the ability to keep coming back to that space and watch with non-judgmental awareness from a state of mental equanimity. So as I said, this isn't something that we can suddenly expect to jump into today, but it's something that's interesting to contemplate. Is it really happiness that we seek in each and every moment of our lives, and is that sustainable? Or actually, can we consider the possibility that mental equanimity may actually be a higher state in which we can reside? So please contemplate. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Please do subscribe to the channel, or like the video, or drop a comment, and also give suggestions for other topics that you may like to have covered. So thanks for joining. See you again soon. Namaste.